My husband never wakes up on time, so I let him sleep and leave on our family trip without him. Me and my partner have 5 daughters, who are 7, 6, 4, 3, and one who's 5 months. For a long time, there's been an issue with him getting up to help with the kids in the morning. He thinks he should be able to sleep on his days off work, while I think he should get up when the kids and I do. Or we should at least be alternating who lies in for a bit. We've been seeing a therapist who's mentioned that he should be helping more in the mornings. Recently, we had a family trip planned to the zoo with both of our parents, our sisters, and their kids. Previously, when we've gone out for the day, I've needed to shake my partner awake several times, and he lies in bed while I get the kids ready. He'll finally get up 5 minutes before we leave as I shout at him that I'm getting in the car. I've mentioned to him that this is very frustrating as it's a lot of work getting the kids ready to go out, and it's not fair to leave it up to me while he lies in bed. He'd apologize and promise that the next time he'll get up and help. The night before the trip, I'd told him I'd need to be awake at 6:30 a.m, so could we get everyone ready to leave by 8? He said he'd set an alarm and we went to bed. My alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. and I got up, while my partner kept sleeping. I decided I wasn't going to wake him this time and continued getting the kids ready. At 8 a.m. he was still sleeping, so I loaded the kids into the car and we set off. We arrived at the zoo at 9:30 a.m. and his family asked where he was. I mentioned that he was still in bed and chose not to come. At 10:15 I got a phone call from him asking where everyone was. I said we went to the zoo as planned and I waited for him to get up, but he never did. He got really mad and told me that I should have woken him up like I always do, and I caused him to miss the trip. He then called his mum and complained to her, who yelled at me in the middle of the zoo that I was being unfair and I should have given him a shake to let him know he needed to get up, and that I was about to leave. My mother jumped in and said it wasn't my responsibility to get him out of bed and he needed to take responsibility for himself. A few more words were exchanged and his family stalked off for the rest of the trip. I had a blast with my kids, my parents, sister, and my nephews. When we got home, my partner started on me again and about how I should have woken him up. So, am I the jerk for not waking him up and going without him? A few things I do want to clarify. He wasn't always like this. When the oldest 2 were little, he was always up with them. He'd even get up before anyone else to cook breakfast before going to work. We had to move in with his parents at one point, and that's where things started to change. His family are incredibly misogynistic. His dad works and then comes home, watches TV and drinks beer, while his mum does everything else, including getting him up for work. These beliefs seem to have rubbed off on him, and his mum is very quick to tell him when something is the, quote, woman's job. He's seeing a therapist independently, who suggested he has some form of depression. He's generally pretty good otherwise. He'll help with dinner, cleaning, putting the kids to bed. He's not entirely useless. It's just getting out of bed in the morning which is a long-standing issue. He had a vasectomy after baby number 4, which turned out to be incomplete. I had a hysterectomy after number 5. Okay, update. After posting this, I received messages expressing concern and advice, so I thought I'd update about how things turned out. The morning after this incident, my partner got out of bed when the kids did and took the older girls out for breakfast. Later, I'd asked him if he'd be willing to read the thread and he agreed. He was very subdued afterwards and didn't say much except for agreeing that he was the jerk. The next day, he took off work and saw his GP, started on antidepressants, and we had a long talk. He was ashamed of how he was acting and to see strangers comparing him to children. He cried when he realized how much he was letting everyone down, especially his daughters who'll grow up thinking that this is normal behavior. He confirmed that it all started when we lived with his parents a few years back. He left home at 17 to get away from his mother, and she had told him he'd fail as men need a woman to look after them. Moving back in, he felt like a failure. So it was easy for his mother to feed him other ideas, and she'd also manipulate things I did to look like he was incompetent as a person. Like I'd tell him to relax and I'd handle the dishes, and his mother would tell him that I thought he was incompetent so he should just stop helping me at all. He'd wake up feeling useless, and she managed to convince him that he was unhappy because I wasn't taking care of him the way a wife should. He's decided to go no contact with her, which didn't go well. She cried and told him he was a horrible son for abandoning his mother, and that I was trying to control him by forcing him to do it. He blocked her, but she had just used different numbers to continue calling him. After a week or so, he ended up changing his number, and we haven't heard from his family since. He brought up that he was unhappy at work as it wasn't stimulating enough, but he felt like he couldn't leave. I offered to pick up some part-time work, but he said no. He talked to his boss and took some time off and eventually quit. He spoke to my dad, who used some connections and got him a good job at his company. The new job is primarily a work-from-home position, so he's able to help with the girls more and has more free time. He's able to take the girls to school and watch them play while he works, which they all enjoy. Before he started the new job, he booked a trip for us to go to the snow for a week. We had a blast, and it was lovely to see him relaxed and happy and enjoying our girls and life. He promised to be more honest about how he's feeling, and our relationship has improved immensely. Thank you to everyone who gave judgment and advice. He says it really helped him see things more clearly, especially the toxic relationship with his mother. My lord, I think I've been jaded by such a long period on the job of seeing guys like this never change and just kind of sleep into a more and more hostile environment at home. So in a way, even before I got to the happy ending of this story, it was kind of refreshing. A partner not pulling their weight who considered what their partner had said and was open to reading the opinions of others into the bargain. Honestly, this guy went from being a bit of a layabout in my eyes to actually a really good guy struggling with mental illness. So I have nothing but respect for how he reacted once the problem was put in front of him. He saw that change needed to happen and he took the first steps. As wonderful as children are, managing 5 of them as well as an oppressive work life definitely has the potential to wear someone right down to their nub. Being the only guy or the only woman in such a large family could also make some parents feel isolated as well, no matter how well they get on with the others. Also, the story goes to show that it's not just men who can be drivers of traditionally misogynistic environments at home. His mum is the jerk in this story. I wonder if she had this mentality drummed into her growing up, or whether it was her husband treating her as the cleaning and child-rearing robot. Sadly, she also contributed to the husband's mental well-being. I can't overstate how proud I am of this guy for coming out of all of this as a good bloke. Good on his partner for giving him the gentle prod he needed. Have to come into the office with the flu? Okay. About 10 years ago, my employer didn't have a sick leave policy. It was at your supervisor's discretion. One year, I got the flu and I was in bed for several days. On the 3rd day, my supervisor called and said I had to come into the office the next day. I explained that I have the flu and look and feel terrible, and was still very sick. He said no excuses and no exceptions. His policy is 3 days max. So the next day I went into the office and the president of the company said, "Jesus, why are you here? You look terrible. Go home." I explained that I had to see my supervisor since he said I had to come in. The supervisor sent me home after the president told him he had to. The next week, about 75% of the staff in that office was out with the flu for the whole week. It was a quiet week for me. Okay. So, of course, your supervisor is the jerk here. Even if they suspected that you were faking and taking everyone for a ride, they could have at least asked for a doctor's note instead of dragging you into the office. That would have been annoying for you, and some posts have taught us that doctors just auto-sign those notes out of irritation, but maybe the fear of being caught would make most people come into the office anyway, and your supervisor would be covering their own butt if people ask where you are and why productivity is down. I do have to wonder if everyone being out next week was sickness or opportunism. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today I messed up by telling my parents about my inheritance. My sister died 6 months ago from a heart condition. She practically raised me, so it's been difficult to deal with. I'm in my final year of university and have failed every single class this semester. She'd be disappointed, but it is what it is. My sister never married, never had children. I lived with her near campus. She ran her successful side business, and I got to help her occasionally as a paid intern. She worked a lot, but not to support us. She wanted to retire by the time she was 40. She would have been done in 4 years, and her heart had to fail her first. When she died, her attorney read her will to me. She had left everything to me. She had a generous amount of money put away for her retirement, and side accounts for various activities for her retirement. I didn't know that she had made several real estate investments so she could continue living a comfy lifestyle once she retired. She left her 2006 Subaru to me and willed our current house to me as well. She left nothing to my parents, but as they didn't know she had assets, they willingly paid for the funeral and any other associated costs. My sister was no contact with our parents, and I'm very low contact. We are their only 2 children. At the funeral, my parents asked me how I was going to continue going to college without her money. They thought she paid for it. Psych, I have student debt. I told them that I'd continue to take out loans. They asked about my living arrangements, and I shrugged. At the time, I didn't know all the details anyway. Well, 2 weeks ago, I found out that my parents tried to sell my sister's house whilst I still lived there. They bought a realtor and toured our home and everything. It was all on cameras set up in the home. When I called them and informed them I'd be calling the police, they explained the situation. I told them it's my home and it was willed to me. They couldn't sell it. They were confused heavily. I told them to meet at my attorney's and I set a time. Cut to today. My attorney explained the will to my parents. My mother went as white as a sheet and my father was grumbling about suing me for his rightful money plus the cost of the funeral. My mother began ugly sobbing, telling the attorney he was wrong. Her daughter wouldn't leave the house to someone like me. The attorney cut the meeting short, and now we're all preparing for the inevitable lawsuits coming my way. I just want to sleep and avoid all of this. Just some added info. My mum is a stay-at-home mum, but like the kind who spends half her life at the country club, not the involved kind. Dad is a businessman and is typically on business trips for weeks at a time. They live, as they call it, lower upper class. In short, my sister died and left me her home. Parents tried to sell it, so I had to explain the will. Now they're going to sue me. I didn't expect this to blow up. Thank you everyone for the support. I've gotten to read almost all of the messages and I feel a little less anxious now. I did talk to my professors and 4 out of 6 of them gave me extensions, but the other 2 are being jerks about it. It's fine though. I did sign up for my school's grief group. I just got done changing all of my locks too. Thank you to everyone who helped me with home stuff too. I'll be sure to watch the home insurance bill or get a financial advisor or something. My sister's degrees and mine are in the same field, so I'll be continuing her business too, and I'll need a real estate attorney to redo the leases on her other rentals, I guess. I don't know. It's overwhelming. Okay, since this keeps coming up, I stupidly gave my parents a key a few months after my sister had passed. I didn't know they'd even try selling the house until after the fact. The will doesn't say anything about them, but I'm leaving it up to the attorneys to figure everything out. I'll be paying them regardless for the cost of the funeral, celebration of her life, among other things. Final update for now, my father sent me a text apologizing, said he wanted to sell the house because of the market right now, but he won't push me. Well, it sure sounds like money is priority number 1 to these parents. Not really hard to work out why their kids were so distant from them. It's good that it seems like the dad was willing to cut the legal bullcrap, either because it was clear that it would cost him his relationship with his last living daughter, or because he knew that it wasn't going to work out for him and his wife. The last bits about their lifestyles do make it seem like these social climbers were desperate to make that final leap from lower upper class to middle upper class. Your sister was quite an impressive hoarder of wealth there. It's really tragic that she ultimately wasn't able to enjoy the full extent of the life she was building for herself. I hope that this wasn't a case of her holding off all enjoyment until she hit the magic age of 40 when her retirement plan would kick in. Saving all of that money and doing what you can to make more has the potential to be a very stressful thing. Even if you are on track to be a millionaire, folks, look after yourself. Do activities you enjoy and spend time with the people you care about. Because sometimes life can chuck a cruel curveball like this before your ultimate plans come to fruition. I hope the author kept a sensible income for herself, but also did things she enjoyed and didn't just hoard the wealth. Money is fine until it turns into all that matters. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law it's cringe to continue saying he's child-free whenever I ask him to watch my son? My wife and I have a 4-year-old son. We've been having an incredibly busy work schedule over the last 2 years, and family's been doing a great job helping out with our son. We usually have members of my in-laws take our son whenever we have a work trip or a shift coming up. From my wife's mum to her sister to her dad, all except for my 31-year-old brother-in-law, my wife's brother. He's made it clear he's just not interested in spending time with his nephew. Keeps saying that the reason for that is that he's actually child-free. For so many emergencies, he's turned me and my wife away when we begged him to watch our son, and he didn't even budge or apologize for his attitude. It all came to a head a couple of days ago. I had a work meeting while my wife was out of town and my in-laws were attending a wedding, so no one was free to watch my son except for my brother-in-law. I showed up to his place and told him I was desperate for help and needed him to just watch my son for 2 hours. He refused, even suggested I take him with me to work, but that's not a good suggestion. I begged him and he just said no. I'd had enough. I confronted him and asked, why? Does he not like his nephew? And he threw that, no, it's just that I'm child-free excuse, which made me lose it. I told him to just stop because it's cringe of him to keep saying that and use it as an excuse to be unsupportive of me and his sister and cold towards his nephew. I told him that he should really do better and stop being so negative, but he got mad and said I had no right to disrespect his lifestyle and choices, but it's the attitude that gets me. We had an exchange of words where he said my son isn't his responsibility whatsoever. Then I left. He complained to my in-laws and they called me out for disrespecting their son and treating him like that. They insisted that he's not responsible for my son and I shouldn't expect so much from him and then guilt him about it. They wanted me to apologize and my wife said I should, but he was about as helpful and supportive as a rock, so I decided that I'll take my time before I consider apologizing. Am I the jerk? Yeah, I kind of think you are the jerk here. Look, I understand that families help each other out, but there are a lot of people who literally can't deal with kids and have taken every precaution to cut caring for them out of their lives for a multitude of reasons, including mental illness, lifestyle unsuitability, and any number of other valid concerns. It's nice for your family to help out, but ultimately the raising of your child falls to you and you alone. The others actually have no legal obligation to raise your child for you. If you need a sitter and nobody else is available, find a paid one. If you take that many work trips, I sure as heck hope that you're being compensated well enough. Also, how many darn emergencies are you taking for this to be such a regular thing? Your work should be a thing that you have some inkling of your commitment to a fair bit in advance, and as such may not really constitute an emergency. It's great that your family are so supportive, but you don't get to take them for granted, author. Am I the jerk for not waking my boyfriend, which made him late to his first day at a new job? I've lived with my boyfriend for 3 years now. When I first stayed the night and he overslept, I woke him up so that he could go to his job. He woke up in a bad mood and after a big fight made it absolutely clear that I should not wake him up even if I knew he'd be late to a meeting with the Pope. His words. After I calmed down, I wrote a contract that said I would never wake him up under any circumstances, short of an emergency, as long as he never blames me for oversleeping. He laughed and signed it. I kept it with my important documents. Daughter of 2 lawyers, get everything in writing and don't sign anything unless you and your lawyer read it, are the rules that I live by. Fast forward to yesterday. He'd just started a new job and celebrated the night before playing with some guys online. He had to wake up at 7 a.m. I woke up at 5 a.m. like usual, did all of my stuff, and by the time it was 7 a.m., he didn't wake up. I left the house at 8:15 and he was still asleep. When I got back there, he was there and very angry. He started shouting and blamed me for being late, said I should have woken him up when I noticed that he overslept. All I did was stay silent until he stopped shouting and then showed him the paper that he'd signed. Then I said, I never woke you up and I never will. You're an adult and you can set an alarm like the rest of us. Also, you being late is a you problem and I have no part in it at all. Now he says that I'm a jerk and I should know that the old rules don't apply since he no longer works for his friend that was lax with time. I still think I did nothing wrong. So, am I the jerk? Haha. Second story in one video about a guy who can't wake the frick up. I guess this video has a theme. And unlike our first story, the gentleman in question is not a hard-working, decent guy under too much strain. What we have here is what we usually run into in our stories, a return to form, an entitled child of a man who can't take responsibility for his own actions and apparently has been coasting off a personal connection in his old job for the longest of times. Absolutely no sympathy for this. Even if it were just a matter of him changing his mind about his sleep-ins and getting vocally angry, that would have been enough for me to condemn him. But he made it even easier by literally putting it in a written document. Also, my money is totally on him being angry if the partner had actually woken him up on the first day at the new job. Call it a professional intuition at judging these kinds of morons all the time. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.